address a meeting of the public body without permission of the chair, and all persons shall, at the request of the chair, be silent. No person shall disrupt the proceedings of the meeting of the public body. And after clear warning from the chair, a person continues to disrupt the proceedings, the chair may order the person to withdraw from the meeting. And if the person does not withdraw, the chair may authorize the constable or other officer to remove the person from the meeting. Who's our constable? Ed. All right. Okay. Anyways, those are necessary announcements that I have. So anyways, I'm just, what I'd like to also do is to start this meeting by going around the room and having everyone introduce themselves, so we're due. And I first want to start with my left, Mass Technology Collaborative.
Great, thank you. Tim Conley, I'm thrilled to be here. Day 3 on the job, so I'm here to learn and hopefully advance the agenda that we have shared on. So, quick background, I was a 30-year partner at Brown Brothers Harriman. It's a private bank. Retired about 1.5 years ago, and noticed about time to get back to work is something that was interesting to have. So glad to be here.
Rick Alberry, MBI BoardMeeting.
Chris Anderson, CFO of Mass Tech.
Presentation.
Brian Noyes, Communications Manager.
Ian Snyder, Mass Tech. Jennifer Solomon, Mass Tech. Dave Lumber, Mass Tech.
Linda Dunleavy, not Mass Tech. MBI board member.
Don Dubendorf, FBI board member, and I have been escorted from the Clarksburg town meeting by a constable. That was about 22 years ago, so it actually happened. I just wanted to.
How come I'm not surprised?
I want to let the chair know that. So.
And Ed.
And then, yeah, and we may have to tussle later.
Was the other constable bigger than you?
He wasn't. No, he was a little light.
Mike Baldino, Mass Tech.
Bill Ennin, Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development.
Dave Chabonneau, the MBI.
Carolyn Kirk, Deputy Secretary, Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development.
And Don MBI.
Phil Hallahan, Mass Tech. Peter Larkin, I sit as the chair, and I special advisor, Secretary Ashton, Economic Development. Outside.
Oh, I'm Bob Hansaker, Town of Charlemont.
Cheryl Hinsager, Town of Charlemont.
Chris Lynch, Matrix Design Group.
All right, so those are all. Going before the matters in front of the members, the first agenda item is approval of the minutes from the July 27th meeting, Massachusetts Broadband Board of Directors. I believe we have them on the board.
Everyone's back.
Everyone's package, okay. So I need a motion.
So moved.
Second, conversations or otherwise. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. What I'm doing through this process is really sort of introducing you to the agenda before us. I guess we're going to get a little, just want to enter technical information on the board for everybody's benefit, even though we have it in front of us. So we're already into tab 2. Fine, no, leave it. Everyone has a board manual. I don't want to hold this up, so we can just continue to go forward.
Hold on a second here.
We have a couple more numbers arriving. Pretty good timing. Work on security. Yeah. So we've been joined while we're going through technical glitch here. We've also been joined by the board members, Karen Charles, who sits on that board, and Joseph Kearney, who's here, and also Michael King, who does the comments as well. Not to hold up the meeting, the report of this chairman is really sort of lay out the agenda. The only key word I would say to you is we're going to have a very dynamic engagement today. Let's tell you what's happening out in the field. And what I'd like to do is go through we're going to do some grant funding project updates. Obviously, we've had some interactions with the Comcast Broadband Extension Program, the charter cable activities out there in Berkshire, as well as in the Middlefield. project and also the Mount Washington. We're going to take on another matter that's going to require a vote, is sort of the last mile program policy update and revisions. If you remember last meeting, we had presented you with the draft, the comments, we have heard many of them were very helpful, and we still have that work in front of us. And we're going to have Ed walk through us the last mile initiative updates and the like, and then we have some previews to discuss for our October board meeting. So to begin this, what I'd like to do is really kind of quickly just walk through where we are on the Comcast agreement. For example, that was an agreement that was executed August 17th. It was a 9-town agreement. Comcast is about the business of visiting every community. It has a requirement to provide that service later than its implementation by August 17th or August 19th, 2018. Work is ongoing and exciting for those communities, and really sort of has been well received for where we're going forward. It's frustrating getting there because of the health of many of you who are in this room today. It really has been a good result in that regard. We also had a charter agreement executed.
Does that agreement require authorization or amendments to town-specific licensure pieces? No, it does not. Then one other question. What is Comcast and Charters, if we know it, coverage in the rest of their footprint? Do we have a sense for that? Are they at 96 or greater?
That's
in most of their other towns that aren't covered by the agreement?
in other locations.
Exactly.
Well,
Do we know that?
Well, interestingly enough, there are locations where they don't have 96% coverage.
Okay.
For example, in the Cape.
Yeah.
Very seasonal
Sure,
environments
I
there,
get
so
that.
they don't have that kind of coverage, so it is not, to receive our money required to get.
I get that.
To 96%.
Yeah.
Some towns, no, they don't have that reach. And there will be other issues in other communities.
And is that on our agenda to address in the future, down the road at some point with them on those other?
No, our issues are the unserved towns that are in front of us.
Okay.
So just the statewide average was 96%.
Yeah, I remember
Which is
that.
how we got to 96%.
Right, I remember that.
So
Yeah.
just to support what the chairman saying, that the other communities the charter provides service for in the Commonwealth,
Yeah.
they may not be at 100%. They
Right.
might be less than that.
Sure.
That's what they agree to with this particular
Towns, I got it. All town specific, not generalized policy here. Got it. So it's not a treaty for the whole state or anything. Got it. Okay.
The other agreement that we need to briefly touch upon is the charter agreement that has been executed. That is, they're lighting up places as we speak in those three communities. It's Lanesboro, Hinsdale, and Stockbridge. And it's really sort of a dynamic that sort of created a real interest in other surrounding towns as well. So it's really well received in that regard. What I'd like to do,
I'd like to add something, Mr. Chairman, if I could. Special thanks to Commissioner Peterson in particular for the support on the charter agreement, and for Michael Canap, who wandered into the wrong meeting about 6 or 8 months ago and has been unable to extricate himself, who did yeoman service on both things.
Just one other question. On each of these agreements, are the affected towns, were the affected towns a party to it in some way or another? Part of discussion, acceptability, etc. Where is anybody out there saying, damn it, this doesn't meet my needs, I don't want Comcast to
well,
expand?
there were issues in a number of towns that sought another provider. And
Yeah.
obviously there was a interest in Montague.
Yeah.
It was a little bit, had to be negotiated.
Yeah.
Or, that being said, conversations with the select boards of each one of those towns have been very encouraging. They've all voted to accept the direction we've gone. And the charter communities are the very same thing, because
Okay.
those towns.
Super.
So they've
Yeah,
all
good.
been brought
Yeah.
forward and are really kind of excited about the opportunities.
And I get daily updates where the trucks are in the Franklin County towns.
And the towns that are abutting the towns that receive the services are asking very, very good questions. What I'd like to do is to move quickly to the Middlefield pilot grant. I believe we'd like to have a little update from there. I think I have you, Bill, on that.
Yep. So we did a pilot award to Middlefield for a wireless project that they've been planning for a while. The project has been put on hold
The bid for the central piece of this project is essentially a 90-foot monopole in town that would be the centerpiece of this wireless project. The bids that were returned indicated that the cost of construction of the foundation was going to send this over budget by quite a bit, essentially twice what had been anticipated for the foundation and the monopole. We worked with the select board to put the project on hold. We know that of the grant that we awarded them, they've only spent, the grant was $129,000. They spent $229.49, and they have outstanding invoices of $16,260. And the select board has affirmed to Peter that the project is on hold, and we are working with the select board to have them go back into the readiness process so they can restart their process because they're nervous about this ballooning budget issue.
Working together with the town, we've come to an understanding that we better served by taking the time that we're taking. So I appreciate everyone's effort, and the town for their understanding of what occurred today. Much as ambition to see in reality, they're revisiting this at the very same time. Dave, I'd like to touch base about the Mount Washington incident.
Sure. Mount Washington, the grant, a forward funding grant was offered to Mount Washington. They're proceeding on course with that grant. They have a design build situation going on in their community. Fiber to the prem, 100% coverage. There don't appear to be any issues. We're kind of in a monitoring mode on that grant where they provide us reports. They've hired a company to do the design build, Next Gen. They had some issues early on with fiber availability. They've overcome those concerns. They have ordered fiber for the community, so they're in make-ready right now, looking at probably completing the project in about 12 months. So.
The next agenda item is the last mile initiative. We're going to hold a vote on this matter to the very end of the formal part of the presentation. Not this one, we're going to have to go through all the issues we have. The reason we want to do that is it's going to be, you'll better understand the needs for the last mile that will take place with the presentation of the status of unserved towns and the readiness process as well. I'd like to have Ed walk us through the changes in the last mile initiative. We can do that, and then you can still ask questions. Like I say, we're going to go vote after the presentation on the unserved readiness process.
Sure. So if you all remember, back at the June 30th meeting, we previewed this policy for the board. We provided a draft copy of it. And as we described them, as we'll say today, really the focus of the policy remains the same, which is to provide as much coverage with the highest speeds possible. The one maybe difference is that we're approaching that problem with a more flexible range of solutions. If you recall, the original last mile policy that was approved by this board, the Mass Tech Executive Committee in July 2015, was very much committed to the regional fabric to the home and build. Since we've been well into the board, we've been processing that and reviewing it. It's become clear to us that we need more flexibility in how we're dealing with these with broadband solutions for these towns. So that's what's reflected here in this document. The other thing that we really wanted to focus on is that because the towns had undergone so much planning with the understandings around the construction allocations that they had been provided, we wanted to reaffirm our commitment to those figures so that the towns knew that they could rely on it given the work that they've done around it, but that we wanted to come up with a way that made sense given what our goals were to assert that commitment to it. So that's another thing that we addressed. And that portion basically remains the same as the draft use, which we can get into in more detail. And again, as we said, this is really kind of reflective of all the work that we've been doing since the MBI and Baker-Pluto administration completed kind of pivot or review of the program that was kind of relaunched at the beginning of May of this year. So I think it might make the most, and just so you're clear, we provided the four policies to the board. The original policy, the version was sort of marked up from what we had given you in June. I tried to just focus on the major substantive changes, not the comma here, the slightly word change here. I tried to draw attention to the substantive changes, and then also a clean copy of that as well. So it might make sense to, I'm sort of open to how the board wants to pursue it. Maybe we can just go through, look at the highlights and explain kind of where we're coming from.
What we've done is we laid them out in tab 3, is the last final rationale. Tab 4 was the old policy. Tab 5 is the red line changes. Tab 6 is the revised last file. You were all provided this before, so we had some conversations with others. So, again,
Sure, so I think if we look at tab 5, I think I'd like to just start on the first page. There's been a new paragraph added under the headline last mile program. And as you can see, it's basically affirming that MBI believes the town should look to private sector solutions wherever possible because of the obvious benefits that come along with that. Remove the burden of operating these networks from the backs of these towns. So that's sort of a kind of umbrella statement that we're trying to make to show our commitment to moving forward in that direction. Somewhat similarly, the next sort of substantive change is the paragraph right after that, where we've removed some of the words about the last mile program being directly connected to the mass broadband 123 network. Again, we've had some private sector solutions that have come to the table that we've pursued that were not connected to the mass broadband 123 network, but they did represent the best option for those towns. So we felt that we needed to move back from the stance that was in the original policy that was very rigorous around the need for connection to the mass broadband 123 network. So we're trying to soften that a bit, given sort of the universe of solutions that we're now seeing come to us to help these towns. The next on the next page, we've eliminated some of the paragraphs. These we felt kind of redundant around the way the applications were divvied up and the impetus for them, and then we felt that they were clarified later on. So, skipping next to the next page, page 3, we have 2 paragraphs that have been struck through again to try to clarify and tighten up the language around that. And what we've done is we've added in this language in brackets. This is new from the version we received in June, and this gets to the issue we're seeing that we would like towns to focus on securing vendors, as the language says, who have demonstrated experience in the residential broadband market and a solid financial foundation. We're also in this passage here emphasizing the need for towns to follow appropriate procurement practices when they're securing vendors. So that is, as well as accepting good business practices. So that's sort of our efforts to clearly establish the way we would like to see vendors selected as these towns are moving forward with whatever last mile solution that town pursues. And then lastly, on the last page, from the June draft, we've removed the language around the need for towns to outright own the infrastructure in these cases because of the different private sector solutions that we might be seeing that we've kind of observed just since June 30th. But as I guess the other important thing to emphasize, what remains the same is still our requirements around how a town qualifies for its construction application. And that's, I'm going to say this for last, to just kind of put a point on it, which was our goal remains that it's a 96% coverage in the community, and it's providing access to speeds of 25 as defined by the FCC. Those are really the linchpin factors that we are really building this program around. As you know, the 25.3 is the broadband definition pursuant to the FCC, and 96% coverage was allowing us to kind of grapple with the problems that it may not be a fiber to the home solution. There may have to be gaps in coverage that we would rather not see, but that just may be a sort of fact of life as we're pursuing wireless options, we're pursuing other types of solutions for towns, given the financial ability that those towns have. But to that same point, we have also kept in this policy the language that allows towns to petition to the MBI board chair for special consideration of circumstances in that town that would still allow them to reach the construction allocation, even though those goals are met. So we're still trying to provide some type of appeal process for the towns, again, to get into the fact that maybe there's some socioeconomic issues, maybe there's some coverage issues. We're trying to keep this as flexible as we can, this policy, to deal with situations that may arise. We're not kind of handcuffing ourselves with how we're pursuing this.
full doesn't get to vote on a motion. Like that it is. Part we want to go over the status of certain towns and the readiness process, show you that this sort of the changing dynamic of your recognizing that's why we need the flexibility to have the policy that we can forward. So if there's any other questions, start right now. This doesn't mean you can't have them later. But if you had any, we could just questions or concerns about the policy. So let's then walk through the start to the readiness process. I'm going to have Dave walk us a little bit through and Bill as well. And not only add the color, but also take you through the slides and just give you an update of where we are at this moment in time.
So I'm going to stand up and make it a little bit easier for me. You understand the partial cable town from earlier comments, so I think that sort of speaks for itself. I was really pleased to hear the earlier comment about the representation of the rest of the Commonwealth, because as your liaison person to towns, I often make the point that it's a mixed bag throughout the Commonwealth in terms of coverage, availability, prices, speeds, and so forth. So with regard to unserved, starting from left to right, so we have 45. We have two that are, we have one that's in operation at Mount Washington being built in, we think, 2017, operational in 2017, Mount Washington. And then we have these charter towns where that we've talked about already. And then we have 34 towns in the readiness process. So let me pause there and say, just for everybody's benefit, the readiness process is a structure by which that we put in place in the summer that allows for towns to come and work with the MBI folks, in particular with a project manager who's an engineer and highly qualified to talk about all the issues around broadband network. And this process, we got quite a compliment in the field recently. Peter and I were visiting with a provider, and his comment was that this has created the structure that has allowed both the towns and the private sector to try to grapple with these issues in any way, shape, or form. So it is a structure, but it has a flexibility, and Ed was reflecting this in the description of the last mile policy. Just a little note, our first town going to poll survey is Ashfield, and on Monday night, over 100 people attended an informational meeting at the select board meeting. The only topic of the select board meeting was broadband. It's about a 90-minute presentation by their designee. The select board was sitting on his right. Our project manager, Todd, was over on the left. He ran the 90-minute meeting. He took, I got 50 questions in my notes that he took from the floor. Sometimes he turned to select board, sometimes he turned to Todd, sometimes he took them. At the end of the program, he got an enormous rousing hand ovation, or cheers and applause. And the town enters readiness, does poll survey this coming week, or this coming week the town starts poll survey. So that's what I mean by it provides a structure and allows a town to move forward. And then we have 6 towns not participating for various reasons, but I would characterize, I'm just going to generally characterize that towns not participating generally are just generally overwhelmed by the whole thing. They don't have a lot of bandwidth in town to organize a committee, and they're kind of hanging back, letting the other towns move forward. We fully intend to work with them, but we know that they're voluntarily sitting out for right now.
Bill, can you name those? Oh, you've got them listed.
Let's see, Florida, Monroe, Braintree, Savoy.
Yeah.
I think I got 5 there. There's one more I'm blanking on.
The mountain towns there, for sure.
There's one more that I'm blanking on.
Okay.
Okay, so next slide. So this is a bit of a scorecard about, so when Peter and I entered this fray in May, and the governor sort of released us to go out and work, we came up with some boxes that the towns could choose to sort of self-select into, and this is a status of that right now. If you appreciate that we believe in flexibility, you'll appreciate this next comment. The way we're doing readiness is that you can be in readiness and you can say, I want to be a fiber to the home, municipally owned, independent network. At the very same time, our engineer in the field can be very comfortable with the committee saying, And if those numbers don't quite look like we want them to look, our second choice might be cable or private partner or where it is. And the engineers are very capable of holding that town in the process in a situation where there's a lack of certainty, which is crucial. So what I can say about this scorecard is that from meeting to meeting, you're going to see a lot of change. And I can say that with confidence because there's been a real uptick in the private sector conversations with towns. And so I'm not going to name companies because I'll offend somebody by not naming them. But we have a lot of private sector companies talking to a lot of towns. And so towns are telling their project manager, whether it's Todd or John or Cornell, they're saying, you know, I had this kind of call from company X and they had this interesting idea. Can we think about, can we talk about that? And that happens inside of that process. So you will see a fair amount of movement across this spectrum as options become more real or less real. And our team has to be part of helping figure out if they're more or less real. So let me pause there. I'll go on to the next slide unless there's questions.
What's the order of Model D? It's not alphabetical, so is it where they are in the process? The 16?
I don't think there's any order.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not in any order. We'll talk about the ones that are really exiting readiness or close to readiness.
Yeah, we have a slide coming up that'll give you a sense of. I guess I want to pause on that for a second because if you remember that I'm saying that many towns are like looking at one option, two options, three options. I really try to stay away from the notion that like this, three towns have rushed ahead and. Because some towns are going to rush ahead and then they're going to stop in place because there's a new opportunity. They have to stop and assess it. They have to do due diligence. So I don't want to create any sense that this is like some sort of, NASCAR experience where we're all going around a oval and, who's in first.
Bill, can you talk a little bit about Model E and the pilot project? Are we talking about wireless?
Yeah, those are both wireless.
Okay.
Royalston's Royalston actually preceded Peter and I's arrival in terms of a wireless experiment. Middlefield project is on hold, and we have a few more coming down this path, either as wireless or pilot, but probably they'll enter as pilot because wireless is just this unknown, right? So when it works, so Warwick is dedicated to taking their current project, which is 6 years old and in the black, that they run, and moving that up to meet our minimums through state support. And they have one of our project managers, Cornell, who has the experience, and they have a very good plan that they're rolling out as we speak. Other questions? Next slide. Okay, so my point earlier was that readiness provides a structure. And the good news is that the absolute good news about this readiness process is that not only to provide structure on the town side, so some committees were formed and heading down the path and they just converged with readiness and kept going. Some towns paused, reorganized based on the structure of readiness, which is financial, technical, legal, governance, etc. That structure is also giving companies a way to engage, because what I think you can appreciate is in a landscape that where the conditions are shifting because private sector firms are coming to the fore, we're not going to get apples to apples to apples. A town's going to see maybe three kinds of solutions, and you can't say apples to apples, apples, bananas to whatever. So it's going to be that complex and fluid because it's not going to be easy to sort of compare and contrast. So let me just give some examples of that. Readiness has generated responses from the private sector, including responses where the town would own the network, the town would not own the network. The town would be involved financially, the town is not involved financially. The speeds and the products include TV, they don't include TV. And all these are very material in our towns with regard to the take rates. Let's just pause on packages for a moment. In Ashfield the other night, there are several citizens who raised their hand and said, is there TV in my package? Now, the Ashfield model looks very much like Leverett. So the meeting kind of had to pause while some people in town explained over-the-top TV through your internet solution. So that's a phrase, over-the-top, streaming TV. And so several people in town needed to have that explained. What does that mean? Oh, that sounds like a package. It's not officially a cable package, but it sounds like a real solution. So people are using the process and these informational meetings between the broadband committee and the town to sort through product, price, speed, and everything about the package and solution. And then on some really very granular level, people are using these processes and the back and forth, especially as you head to poll survey. Somebody's saying, well, I live in Ashfield, but I get served from Buckland. Am I part of that solution? I've got 3 polls, blah, 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 blah. Or in some cases, one side of the road is one town and one side of the road is the other town, and the polls are bouncing back and forth across the road. So the homeowner says, well, what's going to happen to me? And our engineers are right there ready to answer that question with the designee from the town. Questions? Dave, you want to?
Sure. Bill gave was a high-level overview of the program, and I'll put some more structure around it as well as from a status report. You've seen at least the format of these slides before our last board meeting, at least the people who were with us at that point. For the new folks, really just showing where we're at. There's really 45 towns that kicked off, but when we look at the 45 towns that were unserved, but there's 44 that are related to readiness, meaning that 45th one was leveraged, and that they came before we came up with this program structure and the term readiness. So we're in, I think, decent shape. Bill gave an update as far as those towns that are kind of outliers right now, undecided, not sure what they're going to do. The real key on that first thing is the completion, TBD. We always want to provide our board members certainly dates, but in this case, we've left this program very flexible. We don't want to put parameters around the towns that say, look, you need to exit on October 31st or we're going away. We're not going away. This is an iterative process that takes a lot of analysis on our side, takes a lot of analysis for the towns to work through. We have Shalom on here in the audience, they can attest to that. It's a very extensive process, and some towns are more equipped to do it than others. So really what we're going to do is continue to work through these towns and try to take them through what we consider exiting the process. So readiness completion, we're only at 2 towns right now. Again, looking at what this process lays out for the 44 towns. Those are Egremont and Ashfield. Egremont and Ashfield. I'm getting those stuck between the grant process and what we're doing from a readiness standpoint here. So 4 of the 45 towns listed there, Bill talked a little bit about Hensdale, Lanesboro, West Stockbridge with a charter solution, with LevertNet up and running now. 2 towns have exited. Those are Egremont and Ashfield. 10 other towns have substantially completed through the readiness process. 11 towns, even with the slide deck that we sent out to the board members, maybe on Monday I think it went out. That number was 9. It's now updated to 11. So this is continually, at least improving from a statistical standpoint, but giving us a level of confidence that towns are moving forward through this process that we laid out. It doesn't mean, certainly, and I'll talk about what it means when they exit readiness, it doesn't mean that they necessarily have a final solution either. 6 towns are not participating, and again, readiness has no particular deadline.
The green light letter, the DLS will really good financial capabilities of the town.
So exiting readiness. We have 2 paths basically that we've developed through here. Is that you either have there's a third one that's emerged, but initially it was 2 paths. You have a grant that it means you're going to go on it alone. Alfred is an example of that. Mount Washington is an example of that. We have other towns that want to go forward, and Otis is partnering with Westfield Gas and Electric. Bill mentioned a little bit about Warwick. They already run a wireless system, a fixed wireless system in their community. They want to build on that, and they want to move forward with it. We have confidence that they can actually do that. So the next steps on the standpoint of a town-managed project would be to execute a grant with us. We would monitor that grant and ultimately close it up. On the far right side, then it's an MBI managed project. This is where the professional folks that we've hired, the technical staff that are PMs now in the readiness process, would then carry forward into doing poll surveys, into, what we just released was a design engineering RFP. So we'll hire a professional firm to come in and do the designs, and MBI will manage the project end to end. We will basically build the network. It's kind of, we initially talked, I think the board, of this notion of us being a general contractor. I think a better description is we're more like an owner's project manager. We're managing it, the town's going to own the network in the end, so we're the professional project managers. Let's come to the middle box here.
Let me just ask, in those situations, we're not signing a contract with a vendor,
Yes, we would.
Yes.
so we will be fiscally responsible for those
Yes.
liabilities.
All done in your name.
Okay.
And that's what the execute the participation agreement. We don't consider it a grant. It's the towns are going to give us the money, and we're going to manage the funds. They're 2/3
We would be
contribution.
on the hook.
Okay, and in that case, what happens when fund availability runs out? Or either by cost overruns or default some other way?
Last proposal would be on the towns, between an agreement between us and the towns.
So they would be responsible for overruns, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think the way that it would work as a practical matter, there would be a design process that would have various phases.
Yeah.
With increasingly precise estimates of cost.
Yes.
And then ultimately, there would be a construction bid package that went out with a firm bid coming in. Now, at which point, if the town did not want to go forward, if there were excess costs, then they would have the opportunity not to do it.
Can I ask you another question? I missed the last board meeting, but 2 board meetings ago, there was something in the revised last mile policy that MBI would be responsible for some cost overages, and I forgot to look for that.
Yes,
in
that's still in there, so that's actually,
That's what I'm trying to get.
yeah, so if there are cost overruns associated with professional services, MBI has agreed to.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the construction cost
Yeah,
overruns.
okay, good. That's the distinction. Yep.
So, private sector interest, as we mentioned it on one of the previous slides, has really, through Readiness, through the Baker's administration's involvement, whatever it may be, there is a lot of interest out there right now in the private sector, which is a good thing. We always wanted this. We always thought it was going to be there. Well, it's here now, and certainly with the work that's going on with New Marlboro right now, in their process of issuing an RFP, a lot of the stuff will start to be vetted out, and we're trying to determine what the next steps are after that, whether we issue an RFQ or an RFP from our side, or towns continue to issue theirs. It all depends on where the money's coming from. So some of this will be sorted out, but, we have interest from not only the cable companies, we have interest from Frontier, we have interest from Axia, and some regional players like Crocker, and a few others. So this is good. It's just a matter of sorting it out now. So you've seen this timeline on the top. But the real key to this, and reason why we want to bring it up again, when you think about timelines and executing these efforts, from a project standpoint and a timeline on a fiber project, it takes us about 30 months to complete these projects. You can do it quicker, but there's a long lead time right now when it comes to the make-ready activities. In general, the utilities take about 6 months to move those cables on the poles with us. And depending on the complexity, depending on how much project work we give them, in other words, how many towns enter this process, they can put all their work into what is called like a special project category. And that 6 months can go into 8, 10, 12, whatever it may be. We'll certainly keep our thumb on them, but it just exemplifies the fact that the project does take, a long period to work through. Whole survey work is starting in 6 towns. The first ones will kick off next week, as we mentioned, with Ashfield. Egremont will follow, and then 4 more after that. Grant contracts a grant contract structure, a document that we're going to share with the communities that are looking to go on their own. Will be ready in early November. A participation agreement, which is the one where we project manage the effort for them, will be ready in mid-November. And then the design engineering award and board approval for the design engineer will become a board approval sometime in November timeframe. Then ultimately hiring a design engineer starting with us in December. So.
Are you going to talk more about the design engineer?
I had a whole slide, I was supposed to take it out.
Okay, well, hold my question.
Well, let me talk about process. We're going to approve each design engineer for each project as the board.
No, as proposed, if we were actually to go down this path,
Right.
it would be one design engineer
For,
that would be selected for all of these
got
projects.
it. So, got it, okay.
But that was, I'm going to ask my question then.
Go ahead.
So we have 6 towns ready to go to
Yep.
that. Is that we expect the contract, it's one contract and that more towns can be added?
Yes.
Yes.
And so the RFP says kind of an up to number
40,
of
up
towns?
to 40 tons.
Okay.
This is not the cheapest way to do it.
No, it certainly
No,
is,
but-
yeah.
Right.
But the key is that everything will be on a notice to proceed. So within the structure of the RFP, there's things that we know, call it programmatic. What we need them to do across, whether it's 10 towns or 40 towns, right? And there's technology assessments that we need to do across, again, the span of the entire network. It's not predicated on a particular number of towns. However, when you get into the nuts and the bolts and really, getting into where, they need to roll their sleeves up at a town level, we will get that on a per price basis from them. So they will respond and they will quote us on a per town price. So we can provide them a notice to proceed based on a town's decision to move forward with us or not.
So the one design engineer will provide all the design services for every fiber to the prem project.
And in wireless.
And wireless.
Yes.
Okay, and hybrids. To
Sure.
the extent,
Yes.
so options A through M, for
Yes.
example.
And once it happens that there's some tsunami of private sector interest,
Right, yeah, I get that. So that's X of all that. I get that, okay.
So that's
That'll be an interesting contract.
and a hard RFP to bid on.
Yeah.
We have confidence that we have interested
So we have
parties.
14 firms that have attended our initial kickoff meeting. TO&As due on Monday, so we'll see what we get for questions, if they're seeing it the way we saw it or not, or there were no questions at the bidders conference, which is typical. No one wants to show their hands, so I have no question. So we'll know. This thing is going to wrap up fairly quickly to get us to a price, which is real important to test everything that we've done. As Phil said, this is another data point that we'll have along this path of what is it going to cost to build these networks. Everything has been a desktop model. So
and we would like to avoid the experience of the MBI 123 project, which was a design build. We prefer to go a design bid. Design builds are dangerous in the public sector.
What I'd like to do is go back to the previous slide, which focusing again on the private sector interest in the RFP process, using the Marlboro example. Jennifer and Phil and Michael and Ed have been working on that regard, and just want to put an opportunity. Frontiers responded to an RFI, and Marlboro put on the street. Now it's now doing an RFP to try to serve as a template, hopefully with August. So further management of that, so they can serve other communities as well. So just give it a quick.
Sure. New Marlboro is a small town that I had not heard of prior. Sorry.
It's the capital of Western Massachusetts.
1,000.
I thought it was Williamstown.
Oh, no.
Approximately 1,000 residences. Back in November, they put out something called an RFI, request for information. They said, we're interested in the public sector solution to a broadband problem. They got a number of proposals. One of them was from a company called Frontier that said, well, we don't have a public sector solution, but we do have a private sector solution. Our solution is, if you, the town of New Marlboro, through whatever sources you could come up with, were willing to make some kind of a commitment to us over time. It could be based on the number of houses, for example. He said something like, let's say it's $30 per house per month for 15 years. If you were willing to make that commitment, we would come in and build what our fiber network, meaning Frontiers, we'd build it, we'd own it, we'd maintain it, and we would provide some baseline level of service to everyone in every residence in your town for no additional charge. So the town said, we weren't looking in this direction, but it sounds like a pretty good deal. How do we proceed? And that's led, the Commonwealth's procurement laws are not necessarily built with this in mind. And it's led to some kind of a rather arcane but workable thing where if the town could put out an RFP for broadband services and find someone, could be Frontier, could be anybody, who would be willing to respond to some combination of incentive that could involve our money and town money. And we work with the Baker administration to come up with some more innovative and flexible ways of coming up with town money where the town can participate, which are really game changers, frankly. But somebody could win that, and then under some circumstances, perhaps it would be conditioned upon also getting a cable license, maybe even not. But it's led to a whole bunch of issues. You know, how do you qualify? What kind of bidder do you want? We're very fortunate that there's a gentleman named Richard Long, who is very smart, very hardworking, head of the broadband committee. He recognizes that this is a risk allocation exercise principle, where the town would take the customer risk, essentially, if the company would take the other risk. So they're looking for a company that's got the resources to back up the risk. They're very sensitive to that. And how do you work that out? And one of the ways you could possibly do it is you have a requirement that for a cable license or to be cable qualified, because that effectively is a proxy for experience and resources and things like that. So we're working that out. We hope to have some package done in the next week or two. We hope to have it approved by the Inspector General's office. Right, Mike?
Yes.
And they can then start spinning their story, but in the meantime, that could serve as the basis for other towns. And we've been hearing, and without getting into details, that there are other firms that are, again, sophisticated, they have a lot of experience, they have a lot of resources, through some combination of things, particularly the Comcast and the Charter deals that we just did, are expressing some kind of an interest. And actually, I think this is a potential game changer for this entire thing. And as I said to Don, who has been involved in this since 1997, that this is, when I first heard it, is entirely consistent with the Dubendorf parameters, which is more of a private sector solution than us building this thing, or even worse, towns building it.
Let me just say a couple things. One, this could excite me more. It has, I think, a lot of our thinking at MBI has been trapped by a one remedy vision. Everybody had to have the same, it was fiber to the prem. No other solutions. We were convinced that if it were fiber to the prem, we couldn't see our way to capitalizing that effort entirely. So we had to look to cities or towns for a portion of that capital risk. Moving those risks, the CapEx risk and the operational risk off these towns is a godsend for us as an alternative. Because at the end of the day, if we're not thinking about the potential orphan communities, we're going to fail. So we really got to explore this as thoroughly as we can and push these solutions as much as possible. Because at the end of the day, there may be additional burdens on the Commonwealth to get to everybody that can't otherwise afford it. There may be, I know that's an unpopular thing to say, Sorry, Deputy
No,
Secretary, but it's there.
We're calling it the extra mile.
There you go. But I've been around since, I've been trying to grab public capital for this project for a long time. We may need some there, but to help offload those risks, which are not insignificant. I mean, Phil heard me in 1997 say, I never want to have to issue a bill. Think of how hard it is to get a bill on time to the right address with the right amount of money, with some kind of system that sends you it done. I mean, that alone, forget the technological complexity. So this is great stuff. I couldn't be happier. And to see that others are circling this possibility is a godsend. The last thing I'll say is, as we go forward and think about this, this will challenge our vision of 1, 2, 3 and how we think about it. What role it plays, what role MBI needs to play, what role the state needs to play as a better customer of 1, 2, 3, because it's frankly been a horrible customer of 1, 2, 3. It needs to be better. It's failed in that, and so there's a lot. This is a game changer, but it's going to change a lot, not just in the field, but for the way we think about the policies here. And so I couldn't be more excited. I mean, this is really exciting stuff.
And it has been a pleasure to work with the Baker administration on some fundamentals. For example, you don't have to say, we want to do it in an open, competitive way, because before I can get it out, it's Nibs down there saying the same thing to me. So it's like pushing it in the right direction. So
Exciting stuff.
So moving down that road, we've gone through the context of the readiness process, the staff is doing the readiness process, the context of the overview of the last round of policy. And with that, as I said, we have that issue in front of us. What I'd like to do is ask for a motion, but I also want to ask for, again, with that motion, and questions to it. So I'd ask for a motion. Board of Directors of the Mass Broadband Institute hereby approves the revised policy statement for the Mass Broadband Institute as last by the town as presented. As a motion.
So moved.
Okay, second, now I need a question. Well, that's what I'm questioning. With questions and any other.
I'm moving the policy as it had been revised.
There was suggested changes. Do you want to share?
Yeah, no, for me, if you're gonna create the possibility that private providers can play in this field, you gotta loosen up the policy. Policy is clear about private participation in the front and on the back end. There was a lot of language that suggested the only way you play is 1, to participate in 1, 2, 3, and 2, you may endanger your construction allocation if you go the other way with a private provider. Frankly, in my opinion, both of those are wrong-headed. We shouldn't be doing that. The best piece of the reset that we've gone through this year from at the initiative of the administration is to create all these possibilities. And we can't realize any of them if we stay with the straitjacket that was presented in the language we looked at in the last draft. So that's what I think this does.
What we had is here, submitted drafts, we've obviously seen them. We're going to come forward with some visions, some thoughts, we'll pass that along to obviously council. And we'd like, Matt, would you like to channel, would you like to hear some of that?
My understanding is that, around the MD 1, 2, 3 usage, there's one paragraph which is on the.
Do you have anything to say?
I can share this with them. So we had kind of talked about that. Sorry, I'm distracted. So
Just simply.
These are. These are the. So these are addressing the issue that Don was raised. There's just really two simple edits.
Just two simple.
The first being, sorry.
Anybody else?
The clarification at the top of the second page around the language around the usage of the fundamental line. We think that makes it a little bit clear about what the reality is going forward. And then the last change is just really a clarification to make, this wasn't our intention in the drafting, but just to make it clear that the process for the construction allocation commitment to a town is independent of whether it's a public sector or private sector solution. It's really project-based rather than owner-based.
So let me just, some people are a little confused about where we're at. This latest thing that is being circulated now reflects comments that I shared with Ed and Peter as recently as yesterday. Because I was worried about the straitjacket that we talked about in both instances and the town's reliance on the ability to access, if they went with a private sector solution, the access to construction application. So this language was worked out yesterday, literally yesterday, so.
Thank you, President. Bill has some concerns with the rate of maintenance as well.
Yeah.
So, with that, then we do that.
Yeah, I think we have to redo the motion for
So I'd like,
accept the last mile policy as a
so I'd move that the motion be made to amend the policy as suggested in the motion.
So now we can back. Does that get rid of the other one?
Second.
It does get rid of the other one?
So again, we have a motion amended, motion made, have a second. So the vote, the number is the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, anyone abstain? The motion is that culminates the public part of this meeting. What we need to do now is we need to move forward to a...
Don't we need
Do this one last slide, if you want to mention.
Oh, this is, God, you're right. This is just setting the table for the next meeting, okay? We have some issues that are coming at us, and we're gonna need it hopefully, in part, because we're making some progress with some of these towns and the readiness status, the mission survey funding in the next board meeting. We just want you to anticipate that we're going to come in with some delegated authority to do that if possible. We also have some authority to execute some grant agreements. Warwick's on the table, Otis is on the table, Alfred's on the table. And we just wanted to have you anticipate that we're going to come forward with some delegated, asking the delegated authority to expend. So, in those project participation.
And just to clarify, these two different delegated authority requests relate to sort of the two different paths that a town can exit out of readiness. So this first one around the delegated authority to Warwick, Otis, and Alfred, those are what we're calling construction-only grants. Those ones are going to go on their own and do it. The second bullet, the bullet below that, about the project participation agreements, those are for the programs, the towns that are going to be in partnership with MBI for solutions. So we're hopefully going to have examples we can walk you through, but our goal is to sort of lay the table, lay on the sort of the landscape of these, go through what's the content of them, and then get you comfortable with them so we can enter into the other towns as they come along.
So we expect that's going to be one sort of model, that product or that project participation. There's not a lot of granularity in town by town. Okay, so can we get an outline of that sooner rather than later? Some sort of an outline, what we're going to achieve there, how we're going to think about it.
We have project trackers now. Lay out each one of the projects and the participants thereof. Deputy Secretary Kirk's credit. Sort of let us in here. There's no confusion on anyone's part as to what the deliverables are for each participant in this conversation. So.
Dave, when are the design engineering proposals due?
When are they due? At the end of October.
So you may have information at the next board meeting whether people, but not ready to adopt, approve.
I mean, obviously those proposals come in, and based on the number of proposals we get, if it's 14 firms that we have to evaluate, it's going to take us a little bit longer through that evaluation process. I think that number's gonna be something in the 5 range, if not below that. That's typically what we see. But one never knows, so.
Do you know when in October? Do you know what week in October?
We got the last,
It's what, isn't it 20?
when is it? You'll have that information.
it's October 20.
Yeah, but our next board meeting is usually the last.
Needs to be sent out.
So usually the last week after.
I recommend that the new meeting is posted at 10.
How's your helicopter?
Yeah. Jane Swift is out of town, so I couldn't come in.
Wow, that's going way back, way back.
Anyways, we have before us, I'd like to just do a little overview. This part of the meeting is coming to a close in that regard. We want to move to a executive session on litigation policies that are important members. So now we're proposing to go into executive session or discuss strategy, effective management on aspects of the account. The purpose of the meeting is executive session to discuss these matters, to discuss the aspect strategy of an open meeting and detrimental effect of litigation positions from aspects. So you've got to go in that regard. We will reconvene in an open session at the end of the executive session. So we're not proposing to proceed in executive session.
But we don't expect to do anything after we go back other than adjourn.
So I'm going to take a vote if we have board during executive session. With that,
It has been done by roll call.
that's why I'm asking. Roll call vote if we go into executive session. So move to the left.
Yes.
Everyone else should vote in this regard. I vote yes.